Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you so much. You know, one of the things I noticed when I first got here earlier, before even any of you arrived, there were what felt like hundreds of media outlets setting up in the room. I was like, what's all the media here for? What could it possibly be, Senator? I'm really very, very pleased that Senator Paul could join us here today. I actually met him, and I bet you don't remember this. I would not expect you to. In 2007, when I was still hosting a radio show down in Nashua, Senator was in town campaigning for his father, and we talked about his dad, obviously, an awful lot. But one of the questions I asked him was, so what about you? You think you're ever going to run for office? I didn't even think of president. I said, you ever going to run for office? He said, no, my dad's the politician in this family. With all due respect, I think you might have been wearing those same jeans that day as well. I am very, very pleased that Senator Paul is here with us today. I am a big believer that we cannot win if we do not broaden our party and embrace all of the voices. You know, I say all the time, whatever it is that draws you to the Republican Party, whatever part of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness inspires you, I want to stand with you. I want to fight with you for those values and for those principles. We must stand together, and I think that Senator Paul has been a great voice for that message. He has been a strong voice for limited government, for balancing the budget, and in the last couple of weeks, he's been a leader in the fight against his administration on the IRS, on Benghazi. And he was the first person to go to the press and look them in the eye of their camera and say straight out, Hillary Clinton is not qualified to be president of the United States of America. Thank you so much for joining us. Please welcome Senator Rand Paul.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, you can always tell if there's a sign that it may be an easy crowd. If the prayer is interrupted by applause, you've got a great chance with that crowd. And then if we applaud again about the prayer. But no, it is good to be part of a group that does believe in prayer. Now, I want to get one thing straight before I get started here, before I get going, because I can go for a while. I believe that we have to have border control. I believe that there's absolutely no reason we can't have a fence, because we got to keep those people from Massachusetts out of New Hampshire. And you think I'm joking. So about a month ago, I got in the car to go to work, and I thought on the way in that I wanted to say something about drones. I'd been asking the question for a while, and so I got up and I spoke for 13 hours. And I went to CPAC the next week, and I'm talking to a lot of young people. One kid yells out, and he summarizes my speech in 3 words. He says, "Don't drone me, bro." But I did have a point I wanted to make, and it's a point that I think is incredibly important, and it's a point that sometimes we all don't agree on, but I think we should agree on. The question I was asking was, to the president, do you think you have the authority to kill an American on American soil who's not involved in combat? You would think that would be an easy question. His response was, well, I don't intend to. I haven't done it yet, but I might. And it's sort of like him saying he doesn't intend to break the Bill of Rights, or he intends to sort of honor the Second Amendment. Well, you know, the oath of office says, I will defend the Constitution. I will preserve and defend the Constitution. It doesn't say, I might, if it's inconvenient. If it's convenient. If it's not inconvenient. And so we went through this, and we had written letters, and we went back and forth, we could get no answer. And finally we got an answer. And people say, well, that's absurd. He would never kill an American. And as I think I said somewhere, my wife said during the 13 hours, ruin their cafe experience. Sometimes you say things you weren't really intending to after 13 hours. But the thing is that we passed the year before legislation that gives your government the ability to indefinitely detain any one of you without a trial, without a lawyer, and actually send one of you to Guantanamo Bay. That sounds absurd also. And the president said he doesn't intend to use the power. It's not about intention to use power. The reason we keep power from our government, while we've always jealously guarded power, and why from the very beginning we wanted to limit the power of the monarch, we were afraid about the gravitation of power. You know, Madison said when someone has power, you need to have a certain degree of distrust. Madison also said if government were comprised of angels, we wouldn't need to have rules. Patrick Henry said the reason we wrote the Constitution was not to restrain you, it was to restrain your government. The First Amendment isn't about restricting your religious freedom, it's about restricting what government can do to your religion, how they get involved in your religion. These are important things. Whether your officials say they will use them or not, they are important. You can imagine a situation where an Arab American in our country is communicating by email with a cousin who lives in Lebanon. Somebody says the cousin's a terrorist, and now you're associated with terrorism. Do you think you'd get at least a lawyer to defend yourself? And when I brought this question up, another Republican on the Senate floor said, well, I said, could you send someone an American to Guantanamo Bay without a trial, without an accusation? And he said, if they're dangerous. And I said, well, that begs the question, who gets to decide if they're dangerous? Another senator said, well, when they ask for a lawyer, you tell them to shut up. Well, the thing is that when I see the young soldiers who come back, and my wife and I just helped build a house for a young soldier who lost both legs and one arm. When they come home, I ask them what they're fighting for, and they say the Bill of Rights. That is the freedom. So when we talk about fighting for freedom, we have to define what we're fighting for. It has to be about the Constitution. It has to be about the Bill of Rights. Some may not agree with this, but think about it. We had the Boston bomber recently, and I was at a charity event about a week later, and a Boston policeman was down there, and he was giving a speech. It was one of the best speeches I think I've heard in a long time. He ran to the scene. He helped apply tourniquets. He helped people at the scene. He had the same thought every one of us would have, anger, wanting to punish these people. He still has that. I still have that. It's human. It's normal. But he said what separates us from them is that when we did finally capture him and the guns were gone and removed, we could have used lethal force, and we did. But once it was all removed and he was captured, we sent the suspect to a hospital. He's going to be tried in a court of law. He's going to have an attorney. In their country, he would have been dragged through the streets, if it had been an American, that had been drugged through the streets and beaten to death with a tire iron. We are different than they are, but it's our Bill of Rights, it's our law, it's going through the process that makes us different than them. With regard to, let's see, anybody in here a big fan of Obamacare? I figured that wasn't. You know, here's the thing is that the president just wants to take care of you. He just doesn't think you're able to do it for yourself. And so, does anybody in here feel comforted that the new IRS agent in charge of your medical records will be the same agent who was in charge of targeting the Tea Party? I think really there's going to be such a level of distrust, such a level of feeling that how will they ever cross that barrier again? I think there's going to have to be some kind of independent commission. I don't see any way the president can gain back trust. And for goodness sake, somebody's got to be fired. If not, go to prison. The president doesn't think you're smart enough to take care of you, so he's got Obamacare, and I want to tell you how he's going to take care of you. They used to have 18,000 medical codes. I'm a physician. When you come in to see me, I mark down a code, and that's how it gets billed through these numbers. So it's 18,000. Obama's going to make you healthier. There's going to be 140,000 codes. Included among these codes will be 312 new codes for injuries sustained by animals. Among these codes will be 72 new codes from injuries sustained from birds, including 9 new codes for injuries sustained by the macaw. I've been in practice 20 years. I've never seen a macaw injury, but I am waiting to see that. There will be 2 new codes, and this is to keep you safe and to keep you healthy, 2 new codes for injuries sustained by turtles. And you ask yourself, why would there have to be 2? Because the government needs to know whether you were bitten or struck by a turtle. Just trying to take care of you, because you can't do it for yourself. Kids get their news through YouTube and videos. They don't watch the news much anymore. So my 16-year-old son sent me a clip of Jimmy Kimmel on the street, and it's pretty hilarious. Jimmy Kimmel goes out on the street, and he says to the first person who walks up, he says, you understand that the president has pardoned the sequester, and he sent it to Portugal. That wasn't the response. The response was, oh, well, you know, I appreciate the president is such a good man. He wouldn't send it to Portugal unless they deserved it. So he does a few more, and they all respond the same way. And then he does, well, you've heard that North Korea is rattling the saber and launching missiles, but the president has sent the sequester to North Korea. And they're like, damn right, they deserve it. But I think the president is losing the optics of this. The president is losing the public relations battle. He says, woe is me, I've got to close down the self-guided White House tours. Well, he does that, and the same week he announces that he has found an extra $250 million to send to Egypt, in addition to the $2 billion we already sent. So they've got money lying around, or they're willing to print it up to send it overseas, but they don't have enough money for the self-guided tours at the White House. He says, oh, I've got to fire the air traffic controllers. I've got to fire the meat inspectors. We got a $3.8 trillion government, and he can't find any place to cut. If you've seen the chart of what's going on with spending over the next 10 years, it goes like this. If we have the sequester, it goes like this. We still increase spending over the next 10 years. You can't even see the white space between the lines. And he's saying, oh, we don't have enough money. So I've come up with a few suggestions for him. Here's number 1. If you just don't rehire the people who leave through retirement from the federal government, that's $6 billion a year. He waited a year and a half before he even got started. That would have been $9 billion, $10 billion. And he didn't do anything. You can save $10 billion a year by having competitive contracts, meaning that you don't have Davis-Bacon, your schools would cost 20 or 30% less. You do the competitive wage, but you don't have to pay New York City union scale. $9 to $10 billion. There's a lot of smaller items. They run throughout government. For example, last year, you may not realize, you spent $325,000 on a robotic squirrel. Now, you might ask yourself, why would you need a robotic squirrel? Well, it was an important question. These scientists wanted to know whether a rattlesnake would strike a squirrel that was not wagging its tail. But they couldn't get a squirrel to volunteer not to wag its tail. So they built one, and guess what? The rattlesnake will bite the you-know-what out of a squirrel that's not wagging its tail. They spent $500,000 on a menu for Mars. And this is good. If any of you have got a 26-year-old son or daughter living in your basement and you'd like to find them a job, so great job. $5,000 stipend. The study was in Hawaii, all expenses paid. There were some prerequisites. Your youngster had to like food. So they went there, and for a couple of weeks they studied this, and they came up with a menu for Mars, and guess what a bunch of college students came up with? Pizza. I got on the Foreign Affairs Committee this year, and so I got to ask Hillary Clinton a few questions. And I did happen to tell her. We asked her an important question. We asked her, did you read the cables asking for more security? And she said no, and I said, I just can't imagine. If I had been president, I would have relieved you of office. Without question, that is a dereliction of duty. Now, they will say, well, they did a review board, and the ambassador said, well, those decisions did not rise up to her level. Well, that's precisely her culpability. How many countries are there in the world more dangerous than Libya? They should have risen to her level. I'm a physician. If you come in through the emergency room, there are people triaging you, but if you come in with a stiff neck and a temperature of 105 degrees, it's my job to make sure the people out there know that you have to get back to see me. It is her job. When you're talking about one of the most dangerous countries in the world, and they repeatedly ask for more security, and she doesn't get involved and acts like, it's kind of like the president, oh, I know nothing. I know nothing about it. It's inexcusable. And here's the thing. Then they come back and say, oh, well, Republicans didn't provide us with enough money. Back in May, about 4 months before this happened, there was a request for a DC-3 to stay in the country, for ferrying people around the country to leave. They denied the request. 4 days later, they did approve $100,000 for an electrical charging stations because they were greening up the embassy in Vienna. So they've got money to show off for their European socialist friends about how we're greening up the planet with this electrical charging station for 10 cars that cost, on average, you pay for these also, you subsidize these electrical cars, $250,000 per car. So that's what we're doing with the money, but we don't have enough. And I said, well, why didn't you have more Marines? In fact, I'd give her more choice words. I'd say, where in the hell were the Marines? And her answer is, oh, the Marines are there to guard the paper. And I said, well, that's a bit insulting to any Marine I've ever met. I think they're capable of guarding more than the paper. And she said, well, that's what they always do. Well, here's my point. Benghazi's not Paris. And this is what they've completely missed on the review board. The review board went through it and had 64 good, suggestions of things we should have done better. But they missed one whole point. Benghazi's not Paris. Benghazi should have been treated, and still should be to this day, treated like Baghdad. It should be under military control, not State Department control. That implicates the president and Hillary Clinton. When I think of all these scandals, I sort of think of Old MacDonald, had a farm, sort of Old MacDonald's farm of scandals. Here a scandal, there a scandal, everywhere a scandal. So it's hard to know which scandal we want to talk about. But I think they all sort of stem from one problem, that's that the government has accumulated too much power. The president has accumulated too much power, not just this president, but maybe the last 10 presidents, because we've allowed that power to go from Congress to the presidency. We've allowed the presidency to become too strong. Lincoln had an admonishment. He said, nearly any man can stand adversity, but if you want to challenge a man, give him power. I think the president's failing that test of power. Any person who would oversee, and he says he didn't know anything about it, but the word keeps getting out that a lot more people knew about it than they're letting on. Any person who would use the power or abuse the power of government to go after their political opponents, I don't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat or an independent, to take that brute force, that bullying force of government and to use it against your opponents, there is something distinctly and profoundly un-American about that. I've been talking with Reince Priebus and the RNC about how we make the party bigger. We have to do something different. We've run good candidates. I don't blame anything on Governor Romney. I think he was a good candidate, frankly. I think he was one of the most generous, honorable people we've had to run for office in a long time. I don't think you'll find it as an upstanding of a person. But the party, we need to grow bigger. If you want to be the party of white people, we're winning all the white vote. Romney got a higher percentage than McCain got, who got a higher percentage than Bush. But we're a diverse nation. We're going to win when we look like America. We need to be white, we need to be brown, we need to be black, we need to be with tattoos, without tattoos, with ponytails, without ponytails, with beards, without. We need to look like the rest of America. We need to be able to appeal to the working class. The message is big government's not just helping those who are the haves, big government's hurting the have-nots as well. Big government really... One of the things we suffer from big government, from the debt, from the printing of money, is rising prices. an eroding standard of living. Many people in this room, you can handle it. Gasoline, $4, $4.50, you can handle it. If you make $30,000 a year, or you make $50,000 a year, when your gas goes to $4 a gallon, you don't go on vacation. You have trouble getting around. You have trouble getting your kids to sporting events outside of town. It hurts you, but that's big government. We need to be that party of opportunity. We need to be that party that can express it in a way that shows that we care about people. We need to care about people even if they are on government assistance. People on unemployment aren't bad people. People who are on welfare aren't bad people. We need to be able to express that we're the party that's going to give them the opportunity to join the rest of us in the middle class. There's an American painter by the name of Robert Henry, and he writes that when you paint, you need to paint like a man coming over a hill singing. I love the image of that. We need to be the party that proclaims our message like a man coming over the hill singing. We need to be the party that has passion, that believes in things. We don't have to dilute our message. The Bill of Rights, the Constitution, individual freedom, all of those things, liberty, those are things that young people can come to. They want someone who is genuine in how we present them. We don't have to dilute that message. When I think of it, I think of somehow we have to combine the passion of Patrick Henry, give me liberty or give me death, with the passion of the proclaimers who said, I will walk 500 miles and I will walk 500 more just to fall down at your door. We need to have that ardor, that sort of passion that young people have. We need to combine that with Patrick Henry. When we combine that passion again, when we become the party who is like a man coming over a hill singing, then we'll be a great national party again. Thank you very much.